Hello and welcome back. So this is going to be part 2 of my Making of Deathwing series. This will be the part on just making the breastplate here, everything up into the point I painting will be in another video later on once I get a good bit of the armor done. This art right here is designed by Zach Fisher. I'll have his stuff down, his links all down below. He designed this, but Deathwing is from World of Warcraft, and this is the cosplay I'm making for this year. So I'm using EVA foam and plastizote, I hope I said that right, for the breastplate. So I'm going to start off with my base for this. I'm using a Googly cosplay breastplate pattern. I believe this is a modified version of her sexy breastplate. I'll put a link down below to where you can get her patterns. Like I said, I modified it a little bit to fit the shape of Deathwing's, but I didn't have to change too much. Just to fit my size some, and then also just the general shape where it has those like little pointy areas that go down and stuff. But I'm doing all of this on 4mm foam, 4mm EVA foam. I have a bunch of different sizes, so I had to think for a second. But yeah, so I'm doing one layer of this, and here, this is where the booby cups get glued on, as Googly calls them. It gets a little beveled edge on that piece there. She has the instructions on her breastplate patterns, or all her patterns. I've used a few of hers in the past, and they're super easy to follow. But yeah, contact cement to glue everything together, and you just saw I had an acrylic spear. That's just half of one of those acrylic ornaments, and I just used that in a heat gun to get kind of a curved shape into the cups. That way they're not all like rigid. I want them to be smooth. And I just used 1-inch nylon strapping and a 1-inch buckle. And this is going to be my closure in the very back. Now, so I went ahead and put this on my base when I had the base done, and it fit great here, but at the very end, by the time I get all bulked up with all my details, it becomes too tight and I have to remove it later and add about 2 inches into the straps to make it comfortable. So keep that in mind. Adding details to the outside of your armor can make the inside skinnier. But yeah, so I just cut the straps to the size I wanted, put them through the little buckles, clip them in place. I took a lighter to burn the edges so they don't fray. And I just did a simple box stitch, I believe it's called. It's like what you use on dog collars. I make dog collars, so I used to do this kind of stitch, and it's very strong. But yeah, if you use that kind of stitch, like, this isn't going to come apart. And you don't want your breastplate to come apart. That would be bad. So, yeah. I think I ended up trying to show you my box stitch, but I did that in black thread on black strapping, so you can't really see it. But you can Google it, or even YouTube, how to do a box stitch, and so you can kind of see a little bit. Basically, it's you make a square, and then you put an X through the square with your thread. It makes it very strong. Like I said, they use it for like dog collars, any kind of straps like that. So yeah, here's my pattern. Basically, you make one side of your breastplate, then you make the other side, and then you glue them together. And here I was deciding where I need to put my buckle, and then cut off any excess there, because I just kept that part the same as the pattern, and I figured I would just cut off any extra there was. But by the end of this, I probably could have left that on there, because I'd been short 2 inches. But it worked out, it's fine. So here's the base, it's all done. It's ready to go. I'm putting these buckles on here, but if you're smarter than I am, you would wait to do this until later and not when you just have this part of the base, because I'm about to add like 1 inch of goodies on top of this. I did say I use plastizote, so I really hope I'm saying that right. I'll have it in the description spelled out. But it's also commonly known, at least in the cosplay community, as LED foam. It's white. It's not like EVA at all. It kind of has sort of the styrofoam-like texture. Like if you try to run your Dremel across it, it just tears apart, like similarly to styrofoam. Like it's not very smooth. It has a very rough texture around the edges. It has very large pores, so like painting it is showing to be a slight issue. I have to learn how to do that. But it lets light go through it, so that's awesome. But yeah, here I'm just lining up my buckle. I'm making sure I have it right in the center there. I don't want my back of this to be like cockeyed. I don't want one side to be sitting higher than the other. So I made sure I got real even and it looks good. And then I'm going to use the same 1-inch strapping to put little shoulder straps on this, which I'm doing now. This breastplate doesn't call for any sort of shoulder straps, but my pauldrons are gigantic and they'll hide these straps. And I just wanted that support of there being shoulder straps. Plus, I'm going to build the pauldrons off these kind of sort of later. So, yeah. I'm using contact cement to attach them on, and then I'm going to reinforce that later with hot glue around the edges there. It just helps it stay on real good. And here I am patterning out my details for the cups. So if you saw the design at the very beginning, it has like little lava strips, and there's lava strips I need to put lights in. I don't want to put lights everywhere and then them not be like under the EVA foam where you won't see them, because these are very expensive lights. So yeah, I made sure I marked out where the lights were going to go first, that way I'm not being wasteful with my LEDs. And this is the plastizote I was talking about. I'm going to do 2 layers of plastizote, and I'm basically doing my pattern that I used for my base all over again, but slightly wider. Just a little bit. I made it too wide here and I changed it later off camera. But it's the same thing, because there's going to be LEDs all over this thing basically. I made the breastplate out of EVA foam, 4mm. My plastizote is also 4mm. So I have 1 layer of EVA foam and 2 layers of plastizote. And in between the EVA layer and the first plastizote layer are my LEDs. Once again, I'm not doing LEDs in this video because I am new to LEDs, and you should not take points on LEDs from someone who's nerd. So I'll put some links below to good videos to watch. Maybe books as well. Some good cosplay books on that. But yeah. And contact cement works on this too to glue it all together. And gotta do the other side. Basically, just mirror your pattern for one side to get your opposite side. And once again, right here, I made that way too big. I did not need to overdraw it that much. And make sure you put that little bevel where the booby cup's going to connect to your rib part. I guess that's what they can call that. Yeah, that part right there. Oh, and those little tick marks, or dash marks, I'm not sure what you call them exactly. They just help you line up the foam to make sure it's getting lined up right and it's all even and stuff. See, there's one side already. I'm going to do the same thing for the opposite side. But real quick, now that my LEDs on my EVA foam all glued down, I wanted to see how it looks so far with 1 layer of plastizote. And so I'm going to do that. And right now I just haven't hooked up to the computer to do my LEDs because I don't have my battery situation all wired up yet. But that's the animation. The same animation I used for the gauntlets in the last video. So you can kind of see in the video it diffuses the light a little bit with 1 layer that close down, but once I put the second layer on there, it helps it diffuse even more. Yeah. So I did the same thing, mirrored my pattern to get the opposite side here, and now those just need glued together. Same thing that I did on the base piece of EVA, and here you can see I traced out this all again on plastizote because I'm doing 2 layers of plastizote. I did tape this on the plastizote layer onto the EVA layer at first to make sure it was all lined up well, and I just kind of untaped areas at a time while I was gluing the contact cement on there just to help me get things lined up because it just seemed awkward. This is the first breastplate I've ever made. Normally I do like fabric stuff for the chest pieces, so this was a little different for me. And I'm making sure I don't put glue where the LEDs are. I don't know if it actually bothered them. It probably wouldn't, but I just didn't want to do that, so I tried to avoid them. Oh, and here, it was a little awkward to glue these onto the cups, and I tried to use super glue here, and it was a disaster, and I was pulling it off and trying to put contact cement down in there, so just use contact cement. Don't try other glues. It doesn't work very well. Also, I don't like the super glue I have here. And the super glue I normally get is sold out everywhere, like everything else is sold out right now, and I got a different one and I don't like it. Some more contact cement. On the opposite side now. And I think I have the first layer pretty much on there. So yeah, here, one layer of plastic is on, and now I gotta do the same thing all over again. I don't think I recorded that because it's literally the same exact thing. Yeah, so here I have the two parts again that just need glued together and then glued on top of the other layer of plastic. And then the base will finally be done. I think at this point I was like 8 hours into making this all together. Everything that was in this video took me 25 hours to do. So it took a little while. Oh, and where I overshot on the plastic there, I had some like extra hanging off the edge, which I figured it's better to have extra than not enough. And I just took my X-Acto knife and cut around the edges very carefully to trim off all the extra. So I'm going to use some of these foam dowels, or the circular dowels, to put around the edges here, because it has some like details around the bottoms. I want to call them little scales that kind of curve. So I wanted to have a base that's kind of curved there, plus I noticed after I got this far that my breastplate didn't come down quite far enough for those, so that would add a little more room there. So I took these dowels and I cut off just one side a little bit just to give it a flat edge so it had more surface area to glue down to. So I'm not doing this very safely, probably don't do it that way, but these dowels I got were from, I think it's Yaya Han. The ones you find at Joann's. I do not like these ones. I would suggest TNT Cosplay ones. These were very soft and you can't really use a Dremel on them, and cutting them was very awkward, like it wanted to stretch kinda. So it definitely wasn't high density. But it worked for being a base for what was going to be underneath other stuff later. So here I just have them all glued on. I glued it on with contact cement. Basically most of the time, like 90% of the time I'm going to use contact cement. Some small details I'll use super glue or hot glue for it. And just referencing the photo again. Keep your references close. And here I did a test fit just to see the lights. Now all the layers are on there and the base is ready to go. So it diffuses the light a little better. You always have a little bit of dots unless your plastic suit's going to be quite far from your LEDs, but I didn't want to make the chest too bulky. I wanted it to be a little bit bulky because it is a World of Warcraft armor. Armor's bulky. So once the plastic suit was on there, I had to remake my patterns for the rock pieces that go on the cups, because my old ones that I made on the original base, the EVA base, were now too small. The cups are bigger now on the outside. So I had to remake them out of tape, and now I'm cutting them out of, I think I used 5mm EVA foam here. I think it was 5. It might have been 4. It was 4 or 5, I can't tell. But yeah, I originally was going to do 2, but I decided I wanted a little more depth in there. So, and you can see here, I'm using the acrylic sphere again to heat form them into a circular shape a little more. I'll do it again after I Dremel them. I'm dribbling the one edges, like around the edge of the cup, I'm dribbling that smooth. And then the edges that are like where the lava goes in between, I made them smooth and then I kind of cut into it with the sanding barrel there to get more of a rocky texture to it. I will say one thing I did forget to do in the video was I didn't do my battle damage, but I did the same thing for battle damage for this piece as I did in the last video for the gauntlets. And here's just a close-up of how these little rock pieces look. I have that last one to do still. You can see it has these little like curved pieces in there. That was a nice texture to add in. And be sure to heat seal all of your foam, that's always important. And contact cement again to glue them on. You can see I took a pen to mark out where they'd go to make my life easier to glue these on. I will say that this piece was probably one of the pieces I was the breastplate, I was kind of afraid to do. I was afraid it wouldn't go very well, but I was so happy with the final result. So I'm using those dowels, the circular dowels from Joann's again. The EVA ones. Again, they aren't great, but they work for what I'm doing. So the ones I was using for the very bottom were the, I want to say 15mm dowels, and now I'm using the 10mm dowels. These are going to be like the part that goes on the ribs underneath the cups. So they get these little kind of bone scale things on them too, and I'm just using 2mm foam. I cut these little rectangle pieces and I'm gluing them on, but overlapping them about, I don't know, maybe a third of the way or so. That way it has that little overlapped scaly bone look to it. And I just go down all the way down the edge here. I measured out how much I needed by just lining up around the booby cup to figure out what I needed it to be. And just the same square over and over, I think. Each side got like 14 or something like that. 12. Each side got 12, so I had to count 24 of those little white squares. Then once those were glued on there and ready to go, I didn't bother making them go around the back side because I wanted to be kind of flat anyway to glue down onto the plastic soap. And again, I'm using EVA foam. I did take a little strip of 2mm EVA foam to put along the bottom of the cup, because when I lined it up on there before, light was passing underneath, like between the crack of those little scaly rib bits I'm making right now and the cup. I don't want light to go through there, so I wanted to black it out first. So I put that 2mm piece down, and now I glued down the contact cement, the little, whatever you call that. So now I'm going to do the little scaly details that go on the very bottom where I put those bigger dowels earlier. They get like a, they get squares, but like, I made the edges taper in a little bit where they're going to overlap. And then I'm using my Dremel on these to just make little lines. Kind of like, I don't know. I was going to say bone texture, but that's not really bone texture. It's just the texture. It's on the reference page, so it looked right. I just used the edge of the sanding barrel there, sanding drum, to put these little lines in there. You can kind of see them here. And it's just the same method I used earlier for the white EVA foam layered squares, where I'm just going to glue them on top of the dowel that's on the breastplate, overlapping them by about a third of the way across each square. There, I just went ahead and put all the glue on all of it since it's sit for 12 minutes. I did cheat in a few places and use my heat gun to dry the glue faster. I don't know if that, like, hurts the integrity of the glue or not, but I guess I'll find out later. It glued as normal, but I don't know if that hurts the life of the glue or anything. Maybe someone can answer that question. Yeah, here I am just pressing them down. Going around that little bend there, that little corner was a little bit awkward. You just kind of have to play with that a little bit. And then I needed to do the same thing for the top scales. I couldn't really make out on the reference page too much with the top of the opposite side of what I just did area looks like, but from what the little tiny bit I can see, it looks like it's about the same thing as what the bottom gets, but I decided to make them a little bit shorter. So I'm using a half a circular dowel on these. I cut one in half and glued it on each side. And then I trimmed down my pattern I used for the bottom scaly bits to do pretty much the same thing on the top here. I put the little lines in with the Dremel. I'm gluing them over each other by about a third. And now moving on to the boob spikes. These little spikies that go around the top of the cups. You can see the shape here I did, since I decided at this point I should probably use silver Sharpie so you guys can see what I'm doing. I think I had to cut out 18 of these. And I do start on the back side because these are layered, so you want to start at the very bottom and work your way around. If that makes sense? To get the layer right. I did decide on the very bottom of these because once again I can't see on the reference where the back side of the cups attached to the rib part, what that looks like with the spikes, so I just kind of improvised and decided to glue the first spike I glued on there down flat against to overlap the rib bit underneath the boob cup to one, hide mistakes, and two, I didn't know what to do with that spike because it was kind of hidden stuff anyway. And I think it looks good, so it hides mistakes and it looks good. Like, I'll take that. So now I'm doing the little diamond pieces because I'm down to the rocks and the breastbone area. So they get two of these little spiky diamond things, kind of like how the gauntlet had them. And here I'm getting, so these are scraps actually. I saved these scraps from the gauntlets. They were like the little edges I cut off the bottom of the rocks. The rocks on the gauntlets were like the pointy kind, but the rocks on the breastplate are the more flat and round type. So I thought I'd just save all these scraps, which saved me a lot of time while making rocks. And I just kind of cut more edges into them and dremeled them to get a nice little rock shape. There's some larger ones, there's the smaller ones. I did have to make some extra larger ones later because I didn't have enough large pieces that appeared what I wanted. So yeah, I'm kind of showing how I dremeled the rocks this time since in the last video I didn't show that. It's super simple. I just took my foam and dremeled it till I thought it looked like a rock. And I'm just using contact cement here to attach my little diamond pieces. They got shoved kinda between that little rib looking thing, I don't know what to call these things, under the cup. So they kind of layer on top of each other too, and then that center area will get covered up later. I do that last. The rocks I glued on with hot glue. I was using super glue with the gauntlets, but like I said, the super glue I can't find now. It's sold out, so I used hot glue. Seemed to work okay. And here I'm cutting out more rocks so you can kind of see how I do them from scratch instead of using leftover bits of foam. So this is leftover bits of foam, it's just not kind of rock shaped yet. Yeah, I just kind of cut like geometric shapes and then I use the Dremel to get all the dimension to it, I guess. Alright, so now I gotta figure out that center pattern here. That was probably like the piece I was like really concerned with. I think it was the first part of this I actually started to pattern out. It ended up being too small and I had to redo it several times. But I decided to put it in 3 pieces that would overlap. And then, oh, I am using 2mm foam here. I used 2mm foam for the little diamond things too. And for the rocks, it was random bits of foam and random thicknesses. So here I was patterning out the little trim that goes around each of these. And then the reverts on these will be googly eyes. Do you like the googly eyes? Which I just, until they get painted, I feel like it just looks silly because you just have these whole eyes that go down the breastbone. But you know, it works. Once it's painted, it'll look like little screw head things. Yeah, more contact cement. Oh, and you can see that there's little strips off on the right side of the screen and the googly eyes. I have contact cement on those. Those are going to go on the straps, and on the upper right hand side you can see this random chunk of foam. That's going to be my shoulder pads. I'll put a link down in the description for that too. So I got this from Jessica and Brian. Their pauldron support, they have a support video where like this will support the pauldrons later. But I wanted out the Velcro one to my straps on the breastplate so that would kind of hold it in place, and then later the pauldrons will Velcro on top of that. You'll see that later. Plus the video I'm going to link below, it's what I'm following to do that. And now I'm gluing it all together. Oh, and I numbered the pieces. I kept getting the middle piece and the bottom piece confused, but they are slightly different. And I used Quick Seal to smooth out the edges to blend those seams. And now I'm adding the contact cement to glue the 3 pieces together, and they'll be ready to put the googly eyes on and then attach to the breastplate. And then it'll be done, basically. I use super glue for the googly eyes. I hate this super glue. Like I got it because it said it was flexible, so I thought it would be good to foam. But what I didn't read on the packaging is that it takes 30 minutes to set. I don't like that. The other one took like 10 seconds. It accidentally glued googly eyes to myself, trying to glue it onto the gauntlets. I prefer that. Anyway, so here I'm gluing them all together. Oh, and I also had the little chain link things. I forgot about this. So, across like the collarbone area, I got these little chain link things. And I decided to use triangle dowels that were left over from something. Oh, the hands. The hands got these. I have a bunch of that left over. So I used those to make my little circle bits for the chain links, and then we used some 2mm foam to pattern out the little spiky parts that a couple of those get. And I decided to Velcro those onto the front corners of those shoulder pads I just told you about. So it kind of holds it up across my collarbone area. You'll see that in a little bit. But here I am just using contact cement to attach the center piece to. And this is why you decide to pattern out the little spikes for the chain links. So I glued 2 of these pieces together to get one side of the spike, which is what I have right here, and then I glued 2 sets of these together on opposite sides, like this, to get a spiky. I will say that spike's probably a little bit tall, but I think it looks fine, so that's what I decided to roll with. So I decided I want 2 circles to get these, and I decided that I would just do the top and bottom, because since you can't really see in the photo if the other side would get that or not, and I figured that might cause them to interfere a little bit, so I just left it like that. And then more rings to go in the center, and Velcro them on. So I'm really happy with how this turned out. I think it looks awesome. I can't wait to paint it. I pretty much learned that with Plastic you need to use an airbrush to paint stuff, and I don't have an airbrush. So painting's getting held off for a little bit until I get my airbrush. I'll wait a little bit for that though. And here it looks with the lights. It'll look a little different once it's painted, of course. The white areas, other than the ribbing under the breastplate cups, the white areas that are Plastizo will get orange and yellow paint, and everything else get the like black and gunmetal metallic and stuff. So yeah, super excited for this. Next part 3 will be the pauldrons. They'll be gigantic, they'll be wonderful, they'll have spikes and stuff. Can't wait to show you that. Don't know, I haven't started those yet. Hopefully I have that video up in 2 weeks, but if not, I'll have a different video for you in 2 weeks. And then the pauldrons will be after that. Trying to upload videos about every 2 weeks on Mondays, so we'll see how that goes. And I'll see you next time, and all the links for my materials will be down below, and any videos I reference will be down below as well, along with the artist that designed this cosplay. Thank you so much for watching.